The Galien Foundation fosters, recognizes, and rewards excellence in scientific innovation to improve the human condition.
André Malraux said once in one of his novels, "Une vie humaine ne vaut rien, mais rien ne vaut une vie humaine." Human life is worth nothing, but nothing is worth a human life. All these men and women are trying to save human lives. Is there anything more noble than that?
The Galien Awards ceremony is considered the equivalent of the Oscars night for the innovators in the labs and awards every year Best Pharmaceutical Product, Best Biotechnology Product, Best Product for Orphan Rare Diseases, Best Medical Technology, Best Digital Health Solution, Best Incubator Accelerator Equity, Best Startup. Around the globe, the Prix Galien is considered as the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for the industry, mobilizing an unrivaled network of Nobel laureates and top biomedical scientists. The Galien Foundation manages an independent, cross-functional, and geographically diverse program of events and sponsorship to brand the best of the best in new medicines and diagnostics. The Prix Galien is a welcome initiative to stimulate creative research and promote excellence. Barack Obama. The Roy Vagelos Pro Bono Humanum Award for Global Health Equity is bestowed to an individual, a company, an academic institution, or a non-governmental agency that has helped to improve the human condition through the application of biopharmaceutical science to problems of developing or underserved populations worldwide.
This is the right event, on the right issue, at the right time.
Staging this event in Africa is a significant statement that science and innovation are needed as much here in Africa as anywhere else.
I'm particularly grateful to receive this award.
The awards are among the highest honors in science and commerce because they lead to improvement in the human condition.
The Prix Galien Awards recognize the world's brightest minds and most innovative companies. They are a true celebration of the hard work required to produce life-changing interventions.
That is what makes us optimistic about the future.
Congratulations to all of you.
Make a difference. Join the Galien Foundation.
Welcome to the Galien Foundation Week of Innovations webinar here in New York. Objective this week is to provide additional content and background for our largest annual event, the Prix Galien US Awards, to be held this Thursday here in New York in conjunction with our annual Galien Forum of speakers representing top scientific experts and leaders in global health. We have developed this webinar to give our nominees for Best Pharmaceutical, Best Biotech, Best MedTech, Best Rare Orphan, Best Digital Health Solution, and Best Startup Accelerator Incubator greater visibility in describing their journey of medical discovery. This year's Galien US Award has record 178 nominees for our 7 categories from nearly 150 companies covering 15 diverse therapeutic areas, ranging from cancer, cardiology, and neurosciences to infectious and very rare genetic disorders and vaccines. Many of these conditions will benefit from digital solutions and help patients manage their condition. We will be looking closely at the products in all 7 categories throughout the week. In the Best Digital Health category, which is our focus today, we are holding 2 webinars due to the 25 products, a record representing this important field. The second webinar is devoted to 13 nominees in clinical research, trial management, and wellness care. What we will cover today relates to this central question. In what ways can these digital technologies contribute to better outcomes for patients at less costs to overburden health systems? This webinar will include questions from the audience, so please see the Q&A feature, and all questions can be directed to that Q&A feature on your screen. Now let's move right into our discussion. I'd first like to start by introducing the nominees and the scientific clinical representatives who are joining us for this webcast. I'm going to ask each nominee to please give a brief introduction. If you can please share your name, your title, your company, and your nominated product. Marissa, I'll have you go ahead and start.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Marissa Cruz. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for Empatica, a company focused on creating digital biomarkers and platforms to support clinical care and clinical research. Our nominated product is the Empatica Health Monitoring Platform, which is a full stack solution, including hardware wearable, software solutions, and cloud-based infrastructure. Again, meant for deployment in clinical care and clinical research. And I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll just go across the line. I think Roy's next. If you could go ahead and start.
Hi. So Roy Cohen, CEO at Behavidence. Our nominated product is Behavidence mobile app that can detect mental health disorders on a daily basis with more than 90% accuracy. So again, in the digital biomarker segment, but for mental health.
Thank you. Darcy?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Darcy Foreman, I'm Chief Delivery Officer at Science 37. Our nominated product is the Science 37 technology platform, which enables the execution of what we call our MetaSite, which is really a means of trying to accelerate clinical trial enrollment and execution through virtual means. So we're really excited to be here today.
Thank you. Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Longmire, the CEO of Medable. I'm excited to be here. Our product is a global platform to enable speed, access, and overall improvements in clinical trials through decentralized methodologies. And just very much looking forward to today's discussion.
Is it Carissa?
Hi, yes. Thank you, Madeline. I'm Carissa McFarland, founder and CEO of Free. And our nominated product is our Patient Tory Digital Health Data Wallet that securely aggregates medical and health information for patients and consumers. And we help them monetize their data and use AI to also connect them with clinical trials and recommendations to improve health outcomes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Zahid?
Yeah, my name is Zahid Ali. I'm founder and CEO of TechMeadow, and the product that is nominated over here is AI-based primary healthcare system. So we call it a healthcare operating system. So this is a first of its kind, unique system that covers like a lot of areas about communication, about efficiencies into the clinical and operational procedures, and through that, we are really making the healthcare affordable, accessible, and equitable, and bringing the quality of healthcare that can be given at a top-notch hospital to remote areas, especially into the village settings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining today. And John.
Hi, John Martin. Thrilled to be here among my esteemed colleagues. I represent Butterfly Network, and our product is the Butterfly IQ ultrasound hardware and software system, the world's first single probe whole body ultrasound system that's really bringing diagnostic imaging to the four corners of the globe and to outer space. For the first time ever, you have diagnostic imaging in the hands of the most far-reaching jungles to the most advanced hospital systems in the world. So it's really transforming care delivery.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for joining today. Next, I'm going to ask each company representative to briefly address any of the following three questions for our discussion. Number one, why did your company choose to focus on the disease state and indication associated with the new digital technology? In what ways did the product represent a therapeutic breakthrough, and how significant was the level of unmet medical need? Number two, is there a measurable impact you can cite on clinical outcomes for patients with this product? What's been the clinician and patient response to the product thus far? And number three, what challenges did your company confront in transitioning from feasible concept to market authorization? Any lessons from your experience that you might add to a better public understanding or awareness of the innovation process as it relates to the digital space? And I'm happy to repeat those at any time if you guys need a refresher. So I'll go ahead and open up the floor to our nominees, whoever would like to start the discussion.
I'll jump in. And I think I'll start with the very first question because I think it's the most important one. You asked what disease state, and I think what's so remarkable about Butterfly is it's actually every single disease state in every stage of life in every care venue where diagnostic imaging can make a profound difference in care delivery. If you look at around the world, and we have a diagnostic dilemma, and that is when by history and physical alone, I as a physician don't know what's wrong with you, up to 80% of the time, it's simple imaging that answers that question. What is wrong with me? Am I pregnant? Do I have gallstones? You can go on and on. The problem is 2/3 of the world doesn't have access to diagnostic imaging. And so the profound problem we're solving is how do you bring diagnostic imaging to address the issue of health inequity across the world? You make a probe that's the most affordable, the most versatile, that fits in your pocket, and that every clinician, regardless of where you are, can use this and take that powerful information and change the way care is delivered. And I think that's what we've truly addressed with Butterfly. You know, we've had imaging for centuries, we've had ultrasound for 50 years, but never before the invention of Butterfly, putting ultrasound on a computer chip, has access to the forest reaches of the jungle been possible. And I think that's really the big innovation that Butterfly's brought to the table and what's changing the way people practice medicine everywhere.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
I think I can actually build on that if I can go. I think brilliant work by Butterfly. One of the reasons why we embarked on this journey is that in most cases, there are no biomarkers for mental health disorders. So while ultrasound can cover a lot of physical disorders in mental health, even MRI or a CT cannot give you the full picture. And it's coming, at least for me, from a very personal story. My dad has been treated for depression in the last 25 years. And it feels a bit like a guessing game of what's the next medication that he's going to get, and is it going to work, yes or no, and based on what are we measuring this, the efficacy. So basically what we try to create here is digital phenotyping platform for mental health. So what we do is we detect mental health disorders based on subtle changes in how a person is using their phone. And if you think about it, if you're happy, you'll use the phone in one way. If you're sad, you'll use the phone in a different way. If you're schizophrenic with hallucination episode, you'll use the phone in a completely different way. And we train models on thousands, actually tens of thousands of patients with specific conditions to train the machine learning model to detect those tiny changes and basically tell us on a daily basis, is this medication working for you? Or even if you're at risk of committing suicide. And that makes it daily and measurable, which up until now was mostly common for everything from ultrasound to glucose meter patches. And now it's also available for mental health. And that helps us also tailor the right solution to the right problem at the right time and also figure out if it's working or not.
Yeah, I think I'm going to jump in here as well. So again, I think the things that Roy and John have both highlighted are actually completely complementary to what Science 37 is also trying to solve. So we are bringing physicians and clinical research coordinators and mobile nurses to patients through our technology platform. So the nurse is in the home with the patient, but everybody else is connected through telemedicine. So the patient can like participate in a clinical trial through the comfort of their own home on nights and weekends. So it's reducing that burden for the patient to participate in trials. And we know that maybe only 8% of all physicians in the country actually conduct clinical trials. So the investigator network that actually is enabled to run clinical trials for a lot of the large pharma companies is pretty small. And so if you're not co-located or geographically located to one of those physicians, it's sometimes pretty difficult for a patient to get into one of those brick and mortar sites, participate in a trial, etc. So, I mean, thinking about potentially using what Butterfly Network is bringing to the table to do imaging activities in a rural portion of the country with Science 37's ability to run the clinical conduct of a protocol is really about enhancing and accelerating the enrollment of a clinical trial, which at the end of the day is going to accelerate the approval of therapeutics through the FDA and through the EMA in order for us to get more beneficial products to market for a lot of different therapeutic areas. And so much like John had mentioned in Butterfly Network in regards to a vast number of therapeutic areas, we're in the same boat. There's certain therapeutics that we can't do in the home, and we know that, but we're continuing to evolve and kind of drive what concordance of activities that are typically done in a physical location can be done in the home. So one example we're doing in-home respiratory and spirometry. In-home spirometry, typically respiratory therapist, a lot of very highly trained activities. We can model that and bring that into the home, which is allowing some really pretty immune compromised patients the ability to stay safe in their own home by us being able to collect that data and not having them travel into a hospital setting. So we're not so much focused on therapeutics, we're focused on assessments and the ability to really drive continued clinical trial development.
Are there any challenges you face getting trials into homes, like consenting?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, there's certain things we've been around for about 7 years now, so we've learned sometimes by stubbing our toe things that we can do and things that we can't do. It takes a huge partnership with the pharmaceutical companies in regards to being able to agree to the model. But if we can find a path of collecting that data, we know from a patient recruitment and an outreach and an interest perspective that the patients want to participate through this model. So it's really, we're just continuing to drive continued growth in the assessments that we're able to execute within this model.
That's great.
I can jump in next. I'm enjoying the synergy from everybody who's presented so far. So Empatica, as I mentioned, makes a full stack platform, so really focused on wearables and digital biomarkers that are derived from wearable technology. And so that feeds in, I think, quite nicely to a number of the other products that have been presented, particularly Roy and Darcy, that we are trying to enable clinical research by providing the wearable, by developing digital biomarkers, and by developing a platform which is compatible with other software as a medical device, CMD types of biomarkers. So enabling digital biomarkers that are developed by our data science team and those that are developed by other researchers in the field or companies who want to collaborate with us so that we're able to offer a disease agnostic platform, but one that can be tailored to specific disease states for the targets at hand or the research objectives that have been defined. To the question of challenges, we go through quite an extensive clinical and analytical validation process for each one of our biomarkers. And I do think that there's opportunities for streamlining in the process by which you sort of start the clinical trial development process and then go through the regulatory process and then pursue reimbursement, right? So each phase of bringing a biomarker to life, as it will, is a fairly lengthy process and one that could benefit from some parallel considerations, I think. But we've been excited to see some developments from FDA and CMS recognizing some of these challenges in the digital health ecosystem and working towards solutions that help to streamline that process.
Thank you. So I would go next. So basically, the platform that we have done, it's more like we call it healthcare operating system, and that's really work on the cusp of delivery at primary care level. So, and a couple of things that obviously John, Roy, and Maria has mentioned. So we build a platform that is disease agnostic and that is device agnostic. And the focus is really the primary care, where the 75% of the workload is being, going there. So if we talk about the cost of care, 75% of cost of the care is really going into the chronic care management and the mental health. So we are really targeting these two areas, and what we are doing. So while we are talking about the device agnostic, it can talk to any devices, heterogeneous devices, collect the data from those devices, and then on top of that, there are AI algorithms that can comprehend the data and guide the patient what needs to be done. And then like it keeps track of all the movements that are happening into the care delivery, into the medical centers, and even the patients are remote while they are at their homes, and even the doctors or nurses are at their homes. So we are having a complete ecosystem. So and the couple of things that we have done uniquely, most of the systems are giving analytics at a post level. Like once you have done something, then the data goes into the analytics engine, then you have you can drive all the sense out of data. So what uniquely we are doing, we are doing the behavioral analysis of the patient's movement, of the physician, how they are interacting with the technology, with the devices, with the patients. And on top of that, the system is learning on to the real time. And then the system is doing all the time motion studies and advising what needs to be done, what is the time that would take on this step, what is the time that it would take on this step. So basically the challenges, if we talk about the challenges that we have faced, so we got into the rough area, especially into the villages, like taking the care to the like remote possible areas. So where we don't have the internet connectivity, where the manpower is very less trained, and even the people are just moving, switching too much. So how we can deliver the quality of care in those places, having all these challenges. So we build a complete, I would say, a mechanism that is following WHO guidelines, where there is no doctor, and NICE guidelines UK. And what happens? So the structure of care delivery, like if the patient is coming with the problem, he's having a fever, from there till the diagnosis, everything is structured. So means if there is a low level or less trained person is sitting, he can do the same kind of diagnosis that a quality or maybe top notch physician can do. So this is one thing that we have done. And then once the diagnosis comes, then they have the complete care plan available to them. And the same functionality we have done into a complete offline mode, means if you have just a tabs or maybe mobile devices into the remote area, so this technology works without talking to internet over there. Once the internet is available, it can sync the data onto the cloud. Thank you.
Cool. I'll hop in. So I think, what's exciting about all the companies here, everyone is so focused on advancing human health. And when we take a step back and look at an unmet need, the reality is we have fewer effective treatments for a disease than there are diseases by a long shot. And so at Medable, we really think of, the 10,000 plus human diseases and the current really unacceptable pace of drug development. Maximally, there's 55 drugs developed a year. In fact, if you look over the last 15 years, shockingly, this number has remained unchanged. So to us, that says this is really an area where we need to apply technology and apply it aggressively. So we see bigger outcomes. We're going for a 10x, 500 drugs, not 50 drugs approved a year, taking a timeline of 200 years for those 10,000 diseases, down significantly to 20 years. And the way we do that is by really looking at three core problems. How we can address the speed issue. Why is it that clinical trials take so much time? How can we facilitate scale when you look at the global nature of clinical trials, and also how many, incredible experts exist across CROs and pharmaceutical companies who want to be able to leverage technology better, and then ultimately access. How can we get more patients into clinical research? And we do that at Medable through a software as a service platform. We really want to enable one-day study starts through a seamless startup process where you can put a technology in the hands of patients. We want to enable scale by enabling our pharmaceutical partners to actually use technology to execute the trials. And we want to facilitate access by providing an opportunity for every patient in the world who should be in a clinical trial, that opportunity to be in a trial. So I think the unmet need is really evident, I think, as demonstrated by all of the companies here. And at Medable, we're really looking at specifically the technology solution to clinical development. And I think we have.
I can go in. I can hop in.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And everyone had a great response. Just a reminder, we've built a digital health data wallet. And what we've seen, especially here in the US, as we start to digitize and become a more electronic-based society, is just the challenges that exist around actually being able to access critical health information. That has been a challenge due to regulation and just, companies that have sprung up who wants to control that information. So we really looked at it as a ground level infrastructure necessity that needed to happen to be able to not only get technology in the hands of patients and individuals and stakeholders, but to make sure that information is secure, which is why we did, really looked at Web3 as this technology that would be able to help democratize this information. So when we look at, data wallets, people being able to really own that information, we're now able to unlock, that data, with 80% of clinical trials being thrown out because they can't find people. I think before we even go into that recruitment stage is really understanding key patient journeys and being able to look at the data and identify using generative AI, a lot of these new technologies that are coming into play, and how we can unlock that value to really meet patients where they are, or really do more risk stratification that is needed when we look at chronic diseases, right? And the thousands of diseases that exist today, and understanding the pathway to those ailments. So that's one thing that, our goal is to be able to unlock the power of that data, not only by having that, individual ownership, but really using it as a utility to understand these disease states for further research.
That's great. Thank you all for sharing and for getting into more detail about your products. One thing that I would like to focus a little bit more on is the impact that you can cite on clinical outcomes for patients with your product. I know some of you have touched on it in the last round of discussion, but if there's anything else you could share about the impact that it's had, or what's been the clinical and patient response to your product thus far.
I'll jump in real quick with a fast and easy one. And that was, we recently deployed 500 probes in Kenya, in sub-Saharan Africa. And we trained 1,000 nurse midwives on how to do ultrasound. We brought imaging to a place that had never had it before. And within 30 days, 80% of those practitioners had identified a single life-threatening condition, at least one. And so dramatically, you would see the impact of having imaging at the bedside. We can flip that into areas where we've seen our device deployed on ambulances, where it dramatically reduced the time to diagnosis on patients from 160 minutes in someone that's acutely short of breath to literally 15 minutes where therapy has started. And so I think I certainly don't envy the job of Galien, because each one of these things are so critically important to the way we advance this. And to pick one or the other says, oh, my cancer is more important than yours, pretty hard to do. But I think in each of these technologies, they have dramatic impact on the way healthcare is delivered. Some more forward thinking, some more immediate, but all critically essential. And I think what we've seen with Butterfly is we've had the ability today, by putting ultrasound in the hands of people for the first time ever, having an immediate impact on outcomes, both clinically and financially, in the way the world, trying to address that issue of health inequity around the world.
Should we apply the same order as last time? So definitely, I think one of the key impact points that we're seeing is, first of all, patients and physicians are getting daily scores of mental health, so they can track and also identify comorbid conditions or unidentified conditions, or sometimes wrong diagnosis. one of the sort of side effects of that was that we're seeing 90% adherence levels to therapy. And usually the average in mental health is around 50 to 80%. So this is a significant impact on the therapeutic procedure. The accuracy levels, again, and we're testing it based on every possible ground truth, whether it's like scientific questionnaires or interviews based with the psychiatrist. The lowest accuracy level we have at the moment is around 80%. The higher is at 94%. So it really helps drive the best outcome for a therapeutic solution, whether it's medicine or talking therapy. And we're seeing that users that have higher awareness to their mental health are more likely to recover than users that are on a one-off basis with a clinician. So I think that is the key impact. And the almost obvious one, but we shouldn't undermine it, is preventing suicide. One of our key works has been with the US Department of Veteran Affairs, and that is detecting deterioration in mental health and triggering a help from a third party or a case manager or just a family member to knock at your door and make sure that you're okay. And now we can detect it passively without bothering the patient on the way. So definitely plenty of impact that is actually saving lives.
Yeah, maybe we are going in the same order. So not by design by any means. So again, at the Science 37, because of where we play in the healthcare paradigm compared to maybe some of my co-presenters here, is really in that clinical trial and research space. So and there's a lot of discussion about patient choice and patient journey, and it is the right discussion. So you cannot assume that a patient wants to stay in their home and doesn't want to engage with their physician when it comes to participating in clinical trials, or just, again, within their healthcare. So one of the key data points that we have across our portfolio is that we actually are allowing people to take a choice. So when a patient is hitting a particular study or showing interest in a particular study, we have several examples where we're asking, would you like to go to a physical location or would you like to participate at home? And overwhelmingly, we have, I mean, it's not 100%, but overwhelmingly, we are finding that patient choice of wanting to stay at home is significant. And so in several of our studies, we're driving kind of higher, well, across our whole portfolio, we're driving higher recruitment and enrollment rates than maybe the traditional sites are. And that's just to the scale in which we can enroll. We can enroll across all 50 states at any time. So we enroll probably about the volume of patients that 20 individual sites can do on any given study. And what that is driving is faster enrollment for the overall study so that they can get to their go, no-go decision on drug development and move to that next stage. So it's really about accelerating that drug development process, but not losing sight of that patient choice. And so we're asking those talk points all through the way of where would you like to provide, where would you like your clinical trial activity to take place, and then solving for that patient journey, yet still driving the accelerator on the end.
And I'll just echo that, I think the impact on patient outcomes depends on asking patients the right questions and giving people the solutions that make sense to them to encourage participation in clinical research in order to scale drug development and development of novel therapeutics, right? And so, as Empatica's focus on wearable technology is one of those options, right? That if you stay at home, and that's the way that feels more comfortable for you to participate in research, more intuitive, more passive, that you overcome some of the geographic boundaries of having to be co-located near a particular clinical trial site. Our technology provides the mechanism by which data can be collected continuously and passively and then fed back to a researcher or a healthcare provider in the interest of building new therapeutics. We have found that patients who select that journey are quite pleased with the technology, the ability to wear a wristwatch form factor that they're already quite familiar with, and to have their data collected and be sent automatically to their healthcare provider or clinical research assistant who will be able to check in with them. We've shown evidence of increased retention, increased study participant satisfaction in using our technology. The final point that I will make is on the potential for clinical impact in this space. And I do think that wearable technology in collecting more granular data in a real life setting, in an ambulatory home-based setting in many cases, does offer the potential for developing clinical outcomes that we didn't even know were of therapeutic importance, right? That there's an opportunity that perhaps continuously measured blood pressure is actually more pathophysiologically related to some disease processes and to the impact of some potential interventions than point-in-time clinic-based measurements a couple of months apart. And so I think that there's a lot of potential for direct clinic impact as we gain more information and are able to reshape the way that we think about endpoints in clinical trials.
So Medable has partnered with the Center for Drug Development on a multi-year research effort. And I think it's been an exciting partnership led by Dr. Pamela Tennerts at Medable. And what we've done there is, if you look at technology in any industry, there's a hype cycle. Right? People get very excited, and then suddenly it's like, oh, we're on to the next thing. And I think for us to make an enduring impact, you really need to have strong evidence. And so at Medable, we believe that peer-reviewed research is critical to how we learn what we're doing well and how we can optimize areas where we might not want to make as much of an investment. So with the Tufts Center for Drug Development, we embarked on a research effort, which is now in a peer-reviewed publication that does show a 13x return on investment for phase 3 clinical trials that are leveraging decentralized methodologies. And we're diving into what are the drivers of that. This research effort was a fairly broad effort. It looked at 11 different therapeutic areas. And we, are now looking at, okay, how can we impact, or are we impacting things like patient diversity? What is the return on investment when we look at specific therapeutic areas? And the future research is specifically addressing these questions. But I think that, for all of us as innovators, it's important that we really understand how to make an enduring impact and move things beyond the hype cycle. And I think our research in partnership with the Tufts Center for Drug Development is a meaningful set of evidence to show the benefit of this methodology, but certainly leaves many more questions to be answered as well that we're now looking at around patient access, therapeutic area impact, and ultimately what data which should we all be collecting to be able to answer the impact for patient question even better.
So basically, with us, actually, because we are working on multiple fronts within this technology solution. So we are trying to bring equity in healthcare delivery. And the second thing that we are trying to build is equity into the technology as well. And especially to work with the highest kind of technology solutions and then taking those solutions into a lowest level of setting. So that is something that we are trying to make it happen. And a couple of impacts that I would just like to share, because if we go to the hospital, anywhere into the clinic, so we are lost into those settings where we have to go, which is the place we should visit, which is the best place, how much time we have to wait. Is it time we can take a coffee, or maybe we can do something and come back when our turn would come. So we are doing the mapping of all the touch points of the patient, and within each touch point there are some I would say a safe zone to do that thing in terms of time, turnaround time. So if the delay is happening, immediately the person who is responsible to do that task is notified. So by doing all these small interventions, so the time that initially we started into the clinic, the patient it was taking about 218 minutes for a patient to come into the clinic and go out of the clinic. So we brought that time down to the 47 minutes. So means the base interaction with the physician, that is essentially 18 to 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So the more focus is onto that, less focus is onto the administrative functions. So a lot of administrative functions that are repetitive, so basically are taken over by the system or AI itself. So and even many things that patients has to do, or maybe the front office staff has to do, or maybe nursing people have to do. So those are given at the palm of the patient. So they can do their vitals. They have all these multiple gadgets available to them through which they can do the reading. And then by doing that, we have reduced 30% of the physician burnouts by reducing their time. And even like nursing time with the automation capturing the data from onto real time basis, so that time is also reduced by 40% uh, uh, level. So and then and this is the obviously hype side or top side. So when we go into the patient side, so we have the compliance scoring. So within that compliance scoring, so if the patient is taking the medication, patient is doing the exercise, all that stuff. So there are two kind of patients: the patient who have the mobile device or maybe smartphone, or the patient who don't have the smartphone. They have maybe a feature phone, or maybe somebody else is operating the phone on behalf of them. So we are making a technology that is inclusive, that is equitable, and engaging all those different stakeholders. They are communicating through the SMS, they are communicating through the voice messages, so that they feel engaged. And once something has to be done by the patient, so automatically at that time he is getting an SMS or maybe a voice note that, look man, this is the time you have to do this thing. So by doing that, so we are improving the compliance level of the patient by 80% right now. And even same goes with the physician as well. So they are responsible. They have their own scoring. The nursing have their own scoring. So means it's kind of a full blown system where each step is tracked, and a lot of functions. Like if we go to the any clinical setting, so we have to do a manual form filling every time when we go over there, and it's a lot of repetition. So we took that thing into the hands of the patients, and they do fill the forms, whatever it is required, and that is totally automatic. Once they have filled the previous form, it's automatically called the previous form data, and shown that you can just take the same data because it's not necessarily required to take that data again and again. So these are like interventions that we do into the care delivery directly to make it optimized, make it more adaptable, and especially make it equitable.
That's great. Carissa, see you're coming off mute.
Yes, I would add that in terms of clinical outcomes, the National Institutes of Health recorded that about 5% of American adults ever participated in a clinical trial. This is participation. About 9% of adults actually reported ever been invited to participate in a trial, and that 5% is half of that. So in the US, we have an unmet population need of people who can actually be required to participate in the trial. We have an unmet need of people who don't even know that they're able to participate in trials, right? And most of these populations, underrepresented populations, are minority populations as well that also have a mistrust and distrust of the entire clinical trial process because of the lack of education around that. And what we see in terms of giving people ownership of their data and starting to use these tools to educate them, whether that's AI, generative, machine learning, AI processes, we can start to create more empowered citizens of society that are interested in this participation, which is one of the biggest burdens in just what we face today when we talk about recruitment and when we talk about research and development around that information. So we actually formed the Digital Health for Equitable Health Alliance with a number of just pharmaceutical companies, clinical research organizations, historically Black colleges, and underrepresented medical colleges, such as Morehouse School of Medicine, to really target this problem, right? We're lobbying for not only inclusion in, clinical trials, which, we responded to, the FDA and their new guidelines around promoting diversity around clinical trials. We're also ensuring that these communities, especially in rural areas, have the resources needed and the education needed to be able to understand and participate in these clinical trials, whether that's transportation, if it's not done, virtually or decentralized today. And I feel with our platform, by, being able to have people, really understand their data, we have an AI chatbot. It was an article just came out in Fortune today, how Google and ChatGPT, when you use them to look up medical information, it gives out racist remarks. So by people being able to have their own data and be able to query their own data and have targeted questions that are related to their specific condition, we're able to drive that equity needed and those outcomes needed.
Well, thank you all for sharing. You all are making such a huge impact in this field, and it's great to hear and see the impact that's being made. We do have a question in the chat that I'd like to address to the group. It is asked, how do we improve adoption of new technology?
I love this one. And I love this one because we've experienced what Michelle talked about, and everybody gets really excited with new technology and goes crazy at the beginning. But then the reality of healthcare doesn't like to change. Doctors don't like to change the way they practice medicine. Hospital systems don't like the way they change. Change is miserable for healthcare. We are horrible at it. And I came upon the analogy thinking about this when we invented the car. There were a few cars around. Everybody thought it was really cool. And then all of a sudden, everybody realized we don't have any roads. We don't have any rules. We don't have any signs. We don't have anything actually to make this work. And we've experienced this at Butterfly. And so an incredible adoption of our device. Then there's 1,000 new probes in a hospital system. And everybody all of a sudden said, whoa, how do we actually do this? And so we've had to step back and kind of build that infrastructure, education, training, guidelines, rules, and the professional societies are doing the same thing. I think the way to accelerate adoption is greater exertion, both on the government level, like what we did with Epic, from the professional societies with peer review data to encourage stuff, peers saying, hey, you need to do this. And then the last piece of that puzzle for me is the patients themselves saying, hey, I want this, I need this, you guys need to move in healthcare and you're not. And I think if we move all of these together, that's how we shove healthcare forward a lot faster. If all the things everybody in this panel are doing were adopted tomorrow, healthcare would be a heck of a lot better place instantly. So we've got to work together to make us move faster.
So just answering to same question. Yeah. So answering to same question, I had a bit of a different viewpoint. So basically, my viewpoint goes into more engagement. So basically, when we talk about doctors are not really ready to change because they are not involved into the process of design thinking. So into the design thinking, while we are crafting the things, if we have the right, like patient is involved, the doctor is involved, or maybe caregiver or nurses are involved, whatever the role who the people are playing. So if they are involved and technology is built in a way that their concerns are addressed, and then we can make it more adopted. And this is a process that is, I would say, it's a constant learning based process. We have to understand the behaviors. We have to understand maybe adoption issues, or maybe even the feedback from the people. And then we improve those things. So this is the way we make it technology more adoptable.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think what I was going to say, or what I'm seeing, or what we see on our end, is it has to be very data driven, right? The emotional, the intuitive kind of emotional analytical acceptance of this makes a lot of sense. Everything that everybody is doing through all of these organizations makes a huge amount of sense, and we're seeing the impact. But when it comes to the regulators and the pharma companies, there is a huge amount of cost when it comes to drug development. And so there's the whole, what if there's not concordance in this data? What if, and that's the risk tolerance that we don't have in healthcare systems, right? I think from an adoption perspective, I agree, everybody needs to push, and we need to continue to push. But what we're seeing and where people are pumping the brakes at the end of the day is, by collecting this data in this means, is it the same as the traditional historical way through which we're collecting data? And can we prove that we're getting to the same outcomes? And I think all of us again, in our heart of hearts, believe that it is, but they're looking for the data to back up those decisions. And so if we can accelerate that kind of concordance of data collection, I'm hoping that we can drive the adoption as well.
I can say that on our end, one of the key driver for increasing adoption was to reduce the respondent burden. So we started where onboarding onto the app took around a minute, which is not a lot, but still a minute of your life that you have to dedicate to something that is not urgent at the moment. And now it's less than 10 seconds. And we actually hope that you forget about the fact that you ever installed this app. When you need it, it will be there, but we hope that engagement will be as low as possible. And I think that was a realization process that we went through, and that drove a significant increase in adoption.
Yeah, I was just going to echo, I think, what Darcy was saying, which is, we need real evidence of the benefit and the impact. And I think that the more that we have that, the more people are willing to incur the tax of change. Because I think the other thing that is really important for people to acknowledge is that change is hard. And so if we want to have technology adoption, one of the things we found to be successful is champions and partners who are really willing to play the long game, that, you've got to be able to take learnings and internalize those learnings in a partnership and be able to see the value, measure the impact over time, and really have both a data-driven approach, but one that is aware that those, the first couple of goes out the gate when you're doing something new, there will be new challenges that people haven't seen before. So I think partnerships are really critical, and specifically partners that are oriented on the long game, so that you can begin to really see the impact over time, measure that impact, double down in the areas of impact. So I would say it's both about evidence and critical partners and being able to play the long game on both.
Now, I'll just add one additional factor to consider on the points that both Darcy and Michelle made, which is that I absolutely agree that evidence-based solutions and having a data set that really demonstrates value is incredibly important. Identifying champions is very important. I do think, though, that one element that's also important is the interoperability of different solutions. I do think that healthcare systems and providers sometimes are drowning a bit in the range of point solutions that are out there, and how to navigate who has what data set and how do I understand return on investment, in a wide variety of use cases and clinical domains. And so I think the degree to which we as a digital health community can work on interoperable solutions that can be a streamlined experience for both patients, clinicians, researchers. We will do ourselves a service and increase adoption.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bruno Cohen. I wanted just to, as the session is going to start very, very soon, just to thank you. This is truly something important to us. As you may know, the Prix Galien was born in 1970, and this category, the digital health, is very strategic for maintaining our expansion in the field of and in the landscape of life science. So once again, and we will keep preciously the video recording of your session to promote digital health all around the globe. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
I did want to open the floor to any other questions in the audience. Please use the Q&A feature if there is any other questions, and if there's any other thoughts about the adoption and technology from
I want
the
to throw
panel.
one out to the other panelists, and that is, you talk a lot about data, and it's really important, but even, and I threw this in the chat, even with peer-reviewed data and society recommendations, it's still 15 years before actually things move into adoption. How do we change that? I love data, it's critically important, but we don't respond to that either.
Yeah, I would say it's data's great, peer review is great. We've done all of those things as well. And I really want to take it back to, we've all formed a business. We're all in the process of, really providing value. And that boils down as well to the brand, right? And messaging. If organizations are going to trust that brand, there's going to be that adoption, especially when looking at new technologies. Like we were saying, hey, we're on blockchain, we're on Web3. But if we weren't really showcasing who those partners were, who those early success were in terms of partnerships, data, what, real world evidence we provide, it really boiled down to, okay, what is this company? What are the values of the company? What does it stand for? And I think that companies can really go a long way once they have that brand messaging and brand identity established, especially in a marketplace, right? That people will know and trust them and want to do business with them.
I think, John, your question is completely valid, right? In regards to the peer review and how long that takes. And I don't have the answer, but I would say from what I
was really looking forward to that.
I wish I had the answer. But I mean, again, what we work mainly with pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies, and they're really kind of beholden to the FDA in regards to their drug development. And so that's where, again, this is where our experience is coming from. Is that the FDA has, this is how you should develop this class of drugs, and these are the endpoints that you need to show from efficacy and superiority in regards to endpoint collection and outcomes. And those, again, have some historical old school collection techniques. And so until we can find that, again, that I've talked about the concordance of data of a new way, at the end of the day, will the images collected through a Butterfly Network probe be accepted in a clinical trial data set as equivalent to what is done within a hospital setting with maybe a routine CT or ultrasound scan? And the answer, in my head, in my heart, and everything, is that it's yes. But until the FDA tells the pharmaceutical companies that that is going to be accepted, I think you're going to see this kind of pause and stop in regards to pushing some of these digital technologies forward, because they just don't want to spend the money on something that inevitably is not going to be approved at the regulatory agencies.
I think that's where guidelines also come into play, right? Being a part of an alliance, right? A part of a standardization alliance. Because we also don't want to inhibit corporation, right, within private companies. And I think just by setting these standards, I know FDA and HHS, they have a number of organizations that do data standardization, right? If you become a member and get that certification, that's something that you can show that you're working towards the greater good, instead of just having, set guidelines in place where it kind of inhibits that competition as well among private companies. So I definitely think by setting alliances, partnerships, it can help bring that collaboration needed in the space.
I might just point out, sort of echoing the point that you made earlier, John, that I do think that patients driving demand for solutions is also important, right? So I think that, as an endocrinologist, I actually think that the pace of innovation in diabetes-specific wearables and technology has been remarkable over the last decade, and not only clearance, but also reimbursement practices. And I think a lot of that was driven by patients saying, this is actionable, I know what to do with this is intuitive, this makes my life better, I want this, and we have to solve for that. So I think there are, unfortunately, not enough examples, but anecdotal, parts of this journey where you can point to areas where there has been relatively fast adoption, and a lot of that has been patient voice.
Yeah, my favorite one is I'm on a goal to get rid of the chest x-ray. It's still the #1 imaging study done around the world. We've had a decade of data that shows ultrasound is orders of magnitude better, and yet the most common thing ordered here and abroad is a chest x-ray. So, but I love what's been done with diabetes. I'd love to see us all move in that path. It has been tremendously helpful for diabetics and changed the way their lives have existed.
Yeah. So just coming to a different point of view about all this conversation. So you see all the regulatory stuff, because I come from a regulatory background as well. I had wrote multiple regulations, especially on AI and even digital therapeutics. So basically, the problem that we see as the technology is making very fast move, so the regulators are very slow in adopting those technologies. So most of the regulations are built maybe 10 or 20 years back, and still they operate the same way. So anything that's coming new in terms of technology, they want that those technologies should follow the same pathway. Actually, that can't be the right case actually, because a few things, if as mentioned that something has to happen into the hospital setting, so they have all the settings done for clinical trials. What if the same thing is happening into the hands of the patient? So a lot of the guidelines that are there into the hospital, that cannot be applied into the into the homes. So what are different ways? But this is a problem where we are creating an exclusion. So I always say, innovations create regulations. But right now we had a reverse way where innovations are stopped by the regulations. So the answer to that thing is we have to have a regulatory sandbox. So if the regulatory sandbox is there, a new innovation is coming, so it goes through a regulatory sandbox, and then it proves the point, then the same regulations can be followed by all the same kind of a new innovations that are coming into place. So these are few cents from me, coming from a background of RegTech and even the technology together.
Yeah, I would agree with Zahid as well. Even looking at AI, it's being widely adopted now with little to no oversight or regulatory bodies on how to regulate AI, especially when we think about, health data and AI. And as I mentioned one thing, innovation creates regulation. And I think until we start to understand, the impact of adoption, especially on individuals, we won't really see much regulated, hopefully in the next decade or so. So I think that the best way there is to have like a sandbox, have a think tank, but really have guidelines in place to ensure that we are protecting, users.
I think we've seen a significant change, in this discussion with COVID, because regulation adapts as well when the value is critical. And I think it's a two players game. It's not only the regulation and us as innovators. I think when innovation creates enough value, the regulators have to adapt. And we've seen quite a rapid development with COVID. And I think Michelle's company is trying to double in on that, which is brilliant.
Yeah, thank you guys. And thank you all for sharing. We're already at time. This session went by very quickly. There was one Q&A in the chat that we did not get to. It was surrounding how AI is enabling accelerated patient outcomes for your digital health solution. I would encourage, if you guys have a minute, just to type your answers to that chat, since we won't be able to address it live. And we do have to wrap up, but we do want to thank you again very much for participating and for participating with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah.